Did you pray for your husband? Did you pray for a husband? And this is the one that God gave you, right? Like, what happens when the honeymoon phase starts to wane and we start to see that he's not quite so perfect? You know, that starry eyes that we used to have for him where we just thought he was amazing. It begins to kind of squint into frustration and resentment. Why does he leave his socks on the floor? How lazy is that? Or, gosh, he keeps leaving the toilet seat up. He is so inconsiderate. Our judgments and our resentments escalate as we see him sitting on the couch while we have still elbows deep in the kitchen sink. Gosh, right? How selfish is that? Yeah, you worked all day too, and you cooked dinner and wrangled the kids after school. I get it. I get it. Resentments grow and the walls go up and disconnection increases. And that honeymoon phase it all spirals down. I see it so often with clients. Well, last Sunday at Mass, Father was pointing out that this man really was the answer to a prayer. And so when we back up to that time, trying to remember who he was, what was it that we loved about him, kind of getting back to that awareness and intentionality of where we were back then and starting to look for the good. Because it is our job to learn how to love him, not to judge him, right? That's God's job. We're not God. But sometimes it's so hard when he's grumpy and you're questioning if you married the wrong man. I 100% get it. Well, as I was listening to the Imitation of Christ on Halo this morning, it aligned with Father's homily very much, as I heard that we are not to judge others, but to look humbly at how our judgment of the other applies to ourselves. Right? That's a tough one. Who wants to have to look over here? That's hard work. That's the hard work. And yet that's the work that God invites us to do as we are called to grow in virtue. And think about Our Lady, right? Think about how humble she was. Humility was her superpower. So if we can lean on her and ask her to help us to become humble and to look at ourselves, we can surrender our pride and our judgments and be able to look at, how is it that these things that I'm thinking about him might apply to me? And that as we consider all of this, really, marriage, as an invitation to grow in virtue, as we surrender the illusion of control of anyone other than ourselves. As I said in another video, how marriage is a saint-making machine. It is. When we stay for the long haul, which is what we took vows, right? As Catholics, we don't just jump ship. It's like, okay, so what do we need to do to make our marriage work? And do you remember that scripture that talks about, not to judge, lest we be judged? Yeah. So what if he left his socks on the floor because he was mindlessly heading to bed after a hard day's work? Can you give him grace? Can you give him grace? And then, as you look at yourself, are there ways that maybe you're lazy or negligent in some ways? Maybe even in being negligent in taking care of yourself. Sometimes as women, that's something that many of us are guilty of. How are you inconsiderate? What if you left the seat up for him? Right? What if you shifted that? Because why is it that we want things our way all the time? And perhaps sitting on the couch is actually his way of role modeling self-care. And it's actually an invitation for you to learn how to turn yourself off and go rest. I don't do that well. But my husband, when he's done, he's done. He turns it off. While I'm still spinning and worrying and thinking about what needs to get done tomorrow and how much I need to do before bed and yada, yada, yada. And he's like, can you just turn it off? And no, it's hard for me. So what if I can receive that he's actually role modeling? And that trusting that the dishes will get done in due time. Maybe in the morning, maybe later before bed, maybe he'll do them. I don't know. When we had kids, sometimes to get the kids to do them. And sometimes we use paper plates, right? Like, what if there's another way to manage things than always thinking that it has to be dinner has to be a certain way and the floors have to get mopped after dinner and everything's washed down and cleaned. I mean, I get it, but a lot of that is control. And so, what if the dishes are less important than the relationship? And even the relationship with yourself, where you can pause and ask yourself, how do I feel right now? What do I need? And actually giving yourself permission to go do that. Resentment can grow into anger and bitterness, which will kill a marriage. I know, I've been there. But is that really how we want to show up? I think not. You wouldn't be watching this video if you wanted to have a happy marriage. So I think that it's more of an unconscious, unintentional way that we respond when our self-care is low, when we're not doing our self-care. And so I've got several other videos on this channel about self-care. So if you need some help with that, be sure to watch those. Because resentment points to a lack of self-care. If you're feeling resentful, go do some more self-care, and it will help to alleviate that, as well as gratitude. Okay, that's the other part of resentment. So I invite you really to set your intention to show up as your best self. And I want to ask you, what are the 3 words that would describe you if you're being your best self? Write them down below. I'd love to know, what are the 3 words that would describe you at your best? And then create some reminders on your phone, even pop-ups. If you're not using the YAP app, Y-A-P-P, it's a super cool app that will periodically, just during the day, you can put little mantras, little positive thoughts, whatever you're training your brain on, in there, and it will pop up and help to train your brain, right? And those 3 words, like even putting them on sticky notes and sticking them around the house to remind yourself. And then ask yourself, would your spouse or your children, people around you, describe you in that way? And if not, what do you need to do to show up as her? If not, right? Yeah, if the 3 words that they would describe you as is not how you're showing up right now, then that's the work that you need to do. Focus on becoming her. So just this week, I celebrated with a client that she is really becoming more intentional. She's like taking the coaching that she's been receiving, and she's being very mindful about how she shows up. And she was able to navigate a wedding situation where sometimes as an introvert, it's a little bit hard for her to do. And instead, it was a fabulous experience. She connected with a bunch of people. She's doing a much better job of taking care of herself and rediscovering what brings her joy. And she's really managing her thinking in a beautiful way. She's creating fun and connection, even enjoying dancing with her husband, and something that they hadn't done in years, right? So I could hear her happiness over the phone line. It was really just beautiful to see how much progress she's making with coaching, becoming her best self and changing, right, her experience in life and her satisfaction in life. And that's what's possible when you work with a coach and, a trained coach, and you get some support. So when we shift from that judgment of others to reflecting of ourselves, and we change those old habits as we take Christ's hand, right, and grow in love, grow in virtue, that is going to bring new hope to your relationship. So be sure to type your 3 words down below. I'd love to know. And I'm standing for you boldly. I stand for all marriage, that we can become our best selves and that we can heal our marriage. God bless you.